There's a certain kind of moment almost everyone has had. You pick up your phone to check one thing. 10 minutes later you're still there, and you couldn't say what you were even looking for. Or you finish a full meal. You're not hungry anymore, and you still find yourself opening the fridge for something sweet. Nothing dramatic happens in these moments. No alarm goes off. You just drift. And afterward there's a small, quiet unease, like you weren't fully the one driving. Most people carry a private embarrassment about this. They call it laziness, or lack of willpower, or being addicted to their phone in the joking way people say it at dinner parties, half laughing, half meaning it. But there's a difference between judging a behavior and actually understanding it. And almost nobody sits down to understand it. They just keep quietly blaming themselves, in the same way, every single day, and nothing changes because shame was never the right tool for this in the first place. What's actually happening underneath this is not a character flaw. It's a very old, very efficient system in your brain doing exactly what it was built to do, just in an environment it was never designed for. That system is your dopamine circuitry, and the mechanism behind it is worth slowing down on, because most people have the wrong idea about what dopamine even is. It isn't the pleasure chemical the way it's usually described. Dopamine isn't released when you get the reward. It's released in anticipation of it, in the reaching, not the having. Neuroscientists call this a reward prediction system. Your brain is constantly making small bets about what's coming next, and dopamine fires when something suggests a reward might be close. The pull you feel to check your phone isn't your brain enjoying what's on the screen. It's your brain betting that something might be there. This is also why the fix isn't as simple as just get the reward and move on. If dopamine were only about pleasure, you'd feel satisfied and stop. But because it's about prediction, uncertainty is what keeps it firing. A notification might be nothing, or it might be something. A new video might be boring, or it might be the one that makes you laugh. Sugar might taste like today's version, or it might hit differently. That unpredictability is not a bug in these systems. In the case of apps and processed food, it is very often the design. Slot machines are built on the same principle. So is the infinite scroll. Variable reward is one of the most reliable ways ever discovered to keep a nervous system engaged, and once you know that, checking your phone 40 times a day stops looking like a personal weakness and starts looking like a predictable response to a very well-engineered stimulus. But it would be incomplete to stop at the apps are designed this way, because that explains why the trap works on humans in general. It doesn't explain why some people fall into it more easily than others, and this is where it gets more personal. The nervous system doesn't come into these habits blank. It arrives already shaped by everything that came before: childhood, stress patterns, the environments you grew up navigating. For a lot of people, reaching for something quick and stimulating, a screen, a snack, a scroll, isn't really about the phone or the food at all. It's a regulation strategy. If you grew up in a home where things felt unpredictable, or where comfort wasn't easy to come by, your nervous system may have learned early that small, fast hits of stimulation were a reliable way to soothe discomfort when nothing else was available. That's not weakness. That's adaptation. A nervous system that learns to self-soothe with whatever is accessible is a nervous system that was, at some point, doing its best with limited resources. The habit that looks unproductive now was probably protective then. This is worth sitting with, because it reframes the entire thing. What looks like a lack of discipline in adulthood is often just an old survival strategy running on autopilot, long after the original conditions that required it have changed. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's running a program that used to work. And it's important to say clearly here, none of this makes you broken, undisciplined, or somehow behind other people. There isn't a correct nervous system that doesn't seek stimulation, and there isn't a moral hierarchy between people who reach for their phone 20 times a day and people who don't. Some people are simply more sensitive to novelty and reward than others. Some of that is temperament, some of it is history, some of it is just the environment they happen to live in now. None of that is a verdict on who they are. It's information about how they're wired, not a judgment of their worth. What's genuinely interesting, though, is the paradox sitting underneath all of this. The same sensitivity that makes someone more pulled toward quick dopamine hits is often the same sensitivity that makes them more curious, more responsive to the world, more capable of deep enjoyment when they do slow down. People who feel the pull of the phone strongly are often the same people who, when they actually put it down and go for a walk, or sit with a book, or have an unhurried conversation, feel things more fully than people who were never that wired to begin with. The sensitivity isn't the problem. It's neutral. It just needs a direction. A nervous system tuned to notice small rewards can just as easily be tuned toward music, or conversation, or building something, as it can be tuned toward a feed that never ends. The wiring isn't the issue. The environment deciding what that wiring gets pointed at, that's the real variable. There's also a quieter cost worth naming honestly, not to create guilt, but because understanding it is useful. When a nervous system gets used to constant small hits of stimulation, it can start to find slower, quieter things, stillness, boredom, ordinary conversation, harder to tolerate, simply because they don't offer the same fast signal. That's not a permanent state. It's not evidence that something is wrong with you. It's closer to a muscle that's gotten used to one kind of movement and feels stiff doing another. The tolerance for stillness can come back. It usually does, gradually, once the nervous system isn't constantly being asked for a fast response. So if any of this has felt familiar while you were listening, the phone reaching, the mindless snacking, the vague guilt afterward, it's worth hearing this plainly. You're not lacking willpower. You're not behind. You're a person whose brain did something it was built to do, inside a set of environments, some from years ago, some from this morning, that made that response the path of least resistance. That's not a diagnosis. It's just a mechanism, and mechanisms can be worked with once they're actually seen for what they are. There's more underneath this, too, about why some people crave connection through these habits more than stimulation, and why the way you were soothed as a child quietly shapes what you reach for as an adult. That's a longer thread, and it's one worth pulling on if this is starting to feel like it's describing more of your life than just your phone.